So, whether you are planning a vaginal or surgical delivery for your twins, did you know that there are things you can do for your body to have a better birth and faster recovery? For many expecting twin moms, prenatal visits with their medical provider typically focuses on the development of the twin babies and the birth plans. But very little time is spent on the woman as a whole and what she needs to do to prepare for such a strenuous event as birthing twins. Today, we're here with expert Julie Tupler to dig into the secrets most doctors aren't talking about, how to prepare your body for a better twin birth. This is Twin Talks.
The ultrasound shows your babies to be healthy.
What? Did you say babies? You're huge. Are you having twins?
Are they natural?
Which one do you like better?
Twins, huh? My neighbor's cousin's brother's uncle's a twin.
So can they read each other's minds?
How do you tell them apart?
Twins? You got a 2-for-1.
Do twins run in your family?
Double trouble. You're not having any more, are you?
At least you're not Octomom.
If you're pregnant with twins or you're an experienced twin parent, odds are you've heard it all before. Now it's time to hear from the experts. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2. Welcome to Twin Talks. My name is Christine Stewart Fitzgerald, and I'm your host. I'm a mom to identical twin girls who are now they're 14 years old, and a singleton girl who is 11, and she thinks she's 15. And I'm passionate about being healthy in all aspects of life, especially through a pregnancy. So during my twin pregnancy, I felt like I was just flooded with tons of data and information, and a lot of it was scary, to be quite honest. So I had to figure out what was truly important and what would make the biggest impact on my twin pregnancy and birth. And so for me, that meant that I needed to learn how to strengthen my body nutritionally and functionally to carry the two babies and to deliver them in the way that I hope to. So I'll share more about my story in just a bit after we introduce our guest speaker for today's discussion. So now, if you haven't already, be sure to visit our website at newmommymedia.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which keeps you updated on all the episodes we release each week. And another way to stay updated is to hit that subscribe button on your podcast app. And if you're looking for a way to get even more involved with our show, check out our membership club, and it's called Mighty Moms. And this is where we chat more about the topics that we discussed here in the show. And it's also an easy way to learn about our recordings, so you can join us live. So for today, I want to point out that for this episode, we are trying something new. So we're featuring video of our discussion. So this is a little bit of a new exercise for all of us. We haven't done it before, but when I first talked with our expert, I realized that there are so many really great, important things that can't be shared with just words. And so video is really important. So you'll get to see us all chatting and all those weird expressions that I might make, and you can laugh, and I promise I won't be offended. So let's meet our guest today. We're introducing Julie Tupler. She is a nurse, an author, birth educator, and has been focused on helping women for over 30 years with all the research and evidence-based called the Tupler technique. So she trains medical and birth professionals all over the world, and her program has been translated into 7 languages. So Julie, I am so thrilled to have you on the show today. And I have to say, I remember during my own twin pregnancy, I'd heard a little bit about your program from my physical therapist, and I'd heard about pelvic health, but because I was getting some physical therapy. But even during my physical therapy, there really wasn't much discussion about pelvic floor and abdominal walls and how they work together. And I had only learned about your program after I delivered my twins. So I'm really curious about your story, how you became an expert in your field and how did it start? So Julie, please tell us how it all began.
Well, when I moved to New York, I was, besides being a nurse, I was a fitness instructor. So I started teaching exercise at this health club, and they said, "You're a nurse, you should teach the prenatal class." Now, at that point in time, nobody was doing prenatal. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists had pretty much just written the guidelines for working out. So it was a whole new territory. There was a physical therapist that I took her course. She was the only one, and I didn't really agree with what she was teaching. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to do this on my own. And when the women in the class found out that I was a nurse, they started picking my brain about labor. So I thought, well, let me become a childbirth educator and let me see what they're teaching. And what I discovered after becoming a childbirth educator is that they were only preparing the mind. There was no body preparation. Now, you wouldn't run in a race, right, without preparing your mind and your body. Well, it's the same thing with labor. You have to prepare the mind and the body. It's sort of like I called it the marathon of labor because it's hard work.
Absolutely.
So, so that was how it got started. So then I realized there was this whole, all these people that were interested in prenatal. So I started my business in 1990 called Maternal Fitness, and it was preparing women for the marathon of labor and motherhood. And basically, the whole point of the program was preparing the mind and the body. Now, when I talk about the body, I'm basically talking about the partnership between the abdominal muscles and the pelvic floor muscles because they are connected. So, what happens during pregnancy to the abdominal muscles is that the relaxin that comes in a pregnant woman's body affects the joints, the cartilage, and the blood vessels, but it also affects the connective tissue, that connective tissue in between the outermost muscles, right? So, so what happens is when the baby starts growing and there's this forward force, the abdominal muscles have a tendency to separate. Now, you can control that separation, okay? Because so this separation of the abdominal muscles is called a diastasis, and that word diastasis means separation, and recti, which is the outermost abdominal muscles. So this separation is not a good thing. All right. It's not a good thing because the whole point of these abdominal muscles is to support your back and support your organs. So when the abdominal muscles separate, the connective tissue between them stretches sideways. So it becomes like a piece of saran wrap over your abdominal muscles. So it's not supporting your organs and it's not supporting your back. Okay. Now, when the muscles are separated like this and you look at them under ultrasound and you go to engage them, they move side to side. Okay. Now, this movement is not the movement that they're supposed to be going in. That's not the direction. And what you need to do is bring them closer together so that they move in a front to back direction. This front to back direction is what strengthens the muscles. This is the direction that they need to move in pushing in labor. So the whole point, right, is to keep that separation as small as possible during the pregnancy. The other thing that happens for pushing in labor, and the other thing is that when the muscles separate, this is what happens to the uterus. So here's my uterus, and on the bottom of the uterus is the cervix. Now, the cervix needs to be lined up with the vaginal canal, so it's a straight shot for the baby to go out the body. Okay, so when the muscles separate, the top of the uterus has no support. It tilts forward, and the cervix is now pointing sideways instead of downwards. And if the cervix is pointing sideways, you cannot have a vaginal birth. So, keeping the diastasis as small as possible is important to keep the uterus lined up and for pushing in labor. Now, when I was doing maternal fitness classes, we would check the diastasis in week 1 and week 6. And what we were discovering is that in 6 weeks, the diastasis was actually getting smaller even as the belly was getting bigger. And basically, my aha moment was because I was doing transverse abdominal work. One of the women who happened to be a physical therapist said, "Uh, Julie, honestly, I don't feel my muscles working." And that was because they were doing this. Okay, they were moving side to side. So I took a scarf and I manually brought the muscles closer together. And I said, okay, let's do the exercise now. And she goes, oh my God, I can feel my muscles working. So that was the beginning of me repositioning the abdominal muscles and the connective tissue, that stretched out connective tissue.
So wow. So Julie, I got to say that's really interesting that you just dove in where there was a need and jumped in, and it sounds like your career really took off from women not getting the information that they really needed. So we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna continue our discussion. So today we're talking with expert Julie Tupler to learn what twin moms can do to prepare for a better birth. So let's dive in. So first of all, let's talk anatomy. I mean, you had mentioned a few terms in your introduction about, the pelvic floor and the abdominals. And I just want to make sure everyone listening understands, what that really means. So what muscles are you talking about? I mean, I think we're not trying to get a six pack, right? when we're pregnant. But sometimes we might hear the names of the abdominal muscles and how do they work together? Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So you have 3 layers of abdominal muscles. You have the outermost muscles, which are the rectus abdominis. You have the middle layer, which are the obliques that come at a diagonal. And then you have the innermost muscle, the transverse, and my favorite muscle, that wraps around the whole body and connects to the outermost abdominal muscles. Okay, so during pregnancy, what happens is those outermost abdominal muscles, which are connected to the innermost abdominal muscles, separate. That connective tissue between them gets stretched out and it stretches out sideways. So this is called a diastasis, and the word diastasis means separation. Recti, which is the outermost abdominal muscle. So that's what a diastasis recti is a separation of these outermost abdominal muscles. With the pelvic floor, which are connected to the abdominals, the pelvic floor figurates around where the urethra, that's where you pee, around the vagina and around the rectum. On a man, it goes over around the penis and the rectum. Okay, so that's like your support system. Um, Sort of like I explain it like if you have a bag of groceries, okay, the bottom of the bag is like your pelvic floor, and your organs are like the groceries. So when the pelvic floor gets weak, or the bottom of the grocery bag gets wet, the groceries fall out, and that's what happens to your organs too. They prolapse.
Well, so
So
okay,
that's
now I've
my
heard prolapse, but and I've never, honestly, never heard of this idea of because I think so often we think of the abdominal wall as being here, and then the pelvic, oh, that's just, they're not even connected. But like, I didn't hear about that even in physical therapy quite so much. It was sort of like here are these two things that,
they're,
you
they're,
need
they're,
to
they're
work on.
separate muscles, but there is a co-contraction between them. So if somebody has pelvic floor issues, they really need to handle the abdominals as well, because because think about it. If the muscles are separated, they move side to side. All right?
Hmm.
If they're separated 4 fingers apart or more. Okay? So if you can't work the abdominals, it's going to be hard to work the pelvic floor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important for the abdominal muscles to be strong in order to work the pelvic floor better.
Wow. So now, when it comes to during like a, in as an expectant mom, so if you're in pregnancy, so what are some things that the twin moms should, watch out for? So how would they know if it's functioning properly during the pregnancy, or, if there's something that they should be concerned about?
Um, well, the whole point during pregnancy, with or without twins, with twins, even more so, and I have trained a lot of twins. I was even in the twins book. So uh, that separation in a twins mom gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's very important for a twins mom to think about keeping that diastasis as small as possible by doing um, by doing the by doing my program, which can make it smaller even during the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. So the real goal is to, throughout the pregnancy, is to try to keep that diastasis as small as possible.
And we
And
do and we do that by strengthening that weakened and stretched out connective tissue between the separated muscles. And
mm-hmm,
we strengthen it by repositioning the muscles in the connective tissue, preventing that connective tissue from getting stretched, and then
mm-hmm.
doing the exercises to strengthen both the connective tissue and the muscles.
Okay. And so how does this translate into the birth? So I know, maybe a
Ah,
lot of our moms are thinking, okay, I want to do a vaginal birth, and they're really, hoping to have a successful delivery vaginally. Then there also might be some moms that are saying, hey, you know what, I'm just planning on cesarean. So what, like, how does working on this help in those different kinds of birth plans?
and this is my favorite question. Now, whether you're having a vaginal birth or a C-section, it doesn't matter. It's really, really, really important to to strengthen the abdomen. Now, for pushing, all right, there's a pushing technique that you need to learn, and this pushing technique can get the baby out faster and prevent all the issues that are unnecessary of the pelvic floor, like the prolapse or the falling down of the organs, the hemorrhoids, the urinary incontinence. All this can be avoided if you push correctly. And if you know you're having a C-section, it's really important to know how to do this program in the recovery process, because what happens when they do the C-section, they cut that connective tissue.
Mm.
So, knowing how to use your abdominal muscles in the recovery process is very important for a woman that's had the C-section as well.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, that's good to know that everyone can benefit from really working on the strengthening and having better coordination from abdominal muscles and pelvic floor.
So, would you like me to talk more about the pushing?
Yeah, you know what? Let's talk about the pushing, but I think we need to take a break. And I think when we come back, we will talk about some of the specifics of what women can do. Well, welcome back to Twin Talks. Before the break, we were talking with Julie Tupler of the Tupler Technique and learning why the pelvic floor and the abdominal wall are so important to and working together for a better birth. So now we are going to look at some of the things you can actually do to strengthen those muscles and make them work together even better. So, all right. So, Julie, so tell me, maybe you can show us or talk about what are some of the practical things that the women can do.
Okay, so I'd like to go over the big picture, what you're doing with pushing. Okay, because this is not taught by childbirth educators. And this is really important because it needs to be practiced during the pregnancy so that it becomes second nature when you get to labor. You've practiced it. You cannot do a new skill when you're in pain. All right. It takes
Right.
at least 21 days to learn a new skill. So if you practice um, this pushing technique during the pregnancy, then as I said, it will become second nature. So the goal of pushing, if this is my uterus, okay, the goal of pushing is to push with the abdominals and relax the pelvic floor that's been strengthened and stretched during the pregnancy. We don't want you to tighten this and tighten that, okay? So during pregnancy, in the exercise, when I'm doing the abdominal work, I always start with saying, relax your pelvic floor. When I'm working the pelvic floor, I always say, relax the abdominals so that they know how to tighten up above, relax down below. All right. This is important that they know. So every time they go to the bathroom and have a bowel movement, which is very similar to having a baby, all right, they put their hands on their belly and they use their abdominals and think of the pelvic floor opening up down below. The image, when you first start to urinate, you have to like release that release, or I would say at the end of a Kegel exercise, open up like a little flower. So that image of opening like a flower or releasing is what is important to be able to do. Now, it's important that the pelvic floor be toned, that you strengthen it. A lot of times people say, don't strengthen the pelvic floor, it's going to get too tight down there. The strength of the muscle has nothing to do with the ability to relax it. And a toned pelvic floor is going to go back behind the baby's head instead of a weak pelvic floor that's going to go with the baby's head. So it's important to strengthen it so it's toned, but learning how to relax it. That's crucial. So when they get to the birth, they tighten with their strengthened abdominals that they've strengthened so they can push for as long as they need to push and relax the pelvic floor. So they have to practice that so then they know how to do it. So I would say to my clients all the time, so that to make them laugh and remember, I would ask them, so who are you thinking about in the morning when you're having a bowel movement? I hope you're thinking about me. I get a lot of job satisfaction knowing that you're thinking about me at this precious moment in time. So they laugh and then they remember to do it. So that's really important to practice this because they're going to the bathroom. Now, the other thing is during pregnancy, they get a little constipated. So I ask them to put their feet up on a little footstool about 7 inches. And what that does is that supports and aligns the bowel. All right, because the toilet was invented by a plumber, Thomas Crapper, who he did not recognize the mechanical advantage that squatting offers the body. So so for pregnancy, that's important to put your feet up on a little footstool when you're doing this pushing technique.
Wow. Okay. So what I'm getting out of it is that we need to learn the relaxation as much as we need to think about the strengthening. And it's interesting you had mentioned that in the Kegels. I mean, I think a lot of us, we hear about Kegels all the time from medical providers, and it's this tightening up and this holding, but not so much about the relaxing and the releasing. So I think that's kind of
Because
a new
because
thing.
if they because that ruins the whole thing with the pushing. Because if they tighten here, it's like keeping the cap on the toothpaste. Okay? You can't push the toothpaste out if the cap is on. So you have
Right.
to let that go.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure we could do a whole episode just on, Kegels and relearning, right? What good Kegels are. Oh my gosh. So let me ask you on some of these, because you're talking about like some of the pushing exercises and
So
then
so
also
so
the pelvic
so
floor, right?
so I'd like to mention that
Yeah.
when you're pushing, I initially taught exhale pushing,
Okay.
but then I found out that the women were told to hold their breath and bear down, so I had to change the way I taught pushing. And what I would say is whether you hold your breath and bear down or whether you do exhale pushing, you need to engage the transverse. So I always have them do the little exercise where they put their hand on their belly and put their hand on their pelvic floor. And then I
Okay.
would tell them to hold their breath and bear down. And they would feel it in their face because it's called the Valsalva maneuver. Their
Okay.
abdominals would go forward, making the diastasis bigger. And then you would feel a downward movement in the pelvic floor. And that downward movement is pulling on the uterus, and that's not a good thing. Then I would tell them to engage their innermost abdominal muscle, the transverse, by bringing the belly button to the spine, holding it there, put their hand on the pelvic floor. Again, hold their breath and bear down, engage in the abdominals. And this time it would be a light bulb moment for them because they wouldn't feel it in their face. The abdominals didn't go forward, and there was no downward movement of the pelvic floor. It was a totally different sensation. Now, if, um, so, and people will ask me if a woman has a prolapse, will my program help it? So once you have a prolapse, it's sort of like, it's not like a rubber band. The ligaments of the uterus are like a piece of silly putty. Once they're stretched out, they're stretched out. Okay. So, what my program does, though, is prevents them from getting any more stretched out than they are. Okay, so that's what it does.
Wow.
So,
Okay. And
so
I
when
haven't
so when
heard that.
people so when people push using their abdominals, it saves the pelvic floor. Okay, so they're not going to get the hemorrhoids. They're not going to get the prolapse of the organs. They're not going to get the urinary incontinence. It totally saves the pelvic floor. So having a strong transverse and then knowing how to use that strong transverse while relaxing the pelvic floor is crucial for saving the pelvic floor.
Wow. I wish, I mean, like, seriously, what you're talking about, I mean, it just seems, it makes sense. And I wish that more people were hearing this.
I
I
wish
certainly
so
wish it.
too. That's why I'm here talking about it
Yeah,
today.
absolutely. So let me ask you, in doing this kind of sort of a program, so as a twin mom, I mean, like I just remember having like my to-do list would just get so long, and there's like, oh, there's all this stuff I have to do in preparing for the twins, and I was like, online internet research and learning, so much stuff. And then I felt like there really wasn't enough time or that I was spending talking about like my own body. So for this kind of thing, like, when should twin moms like start engaging and thinking about doing these kinds of exercises and getting a program, or like, does that happen right away or closer to birth?
No, no. It's first trimester. Right after the first trimester, second start of the trimester, for the second trimester, when the nausea's gone away and they're feeling better.
Hmm.
Okay, when they're feeling better, all the major organs are pretty much made. So the beginning of the second trimester is really the best time to start. I've had people start in the beginning of the third trimester and have had results. The best time is in starting in the second, but hey, 2 weeks before you deliver
Not a whole
is
lot of
better than
benefit,
is is
right?
is
Yeah.
is 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 not as beneficial, but there are some benefits to know a little bit about this.
So it sounds like you would need to give yourself maybe at least 4 months or something like that, 4 or 5 months to really benefit the most from, doing these different types of exercise, both from your body getting strengthening and learning how to relax. And I think you mentioned earlier, even just the mental aspect of learning something new, and maybe even incorporating that into the birth plan. Because I know, like, when we go to the different birth education classes, which could take, maybe a couple
And they don't,
months, and they don't talk about it,
and I
right?
know as a childbirth educator, they don't teach this.
Yeah.
They don't teach this, which is sad for me, because I think it's very important, from many different aspects.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that it's if you get the knowledge and the practice earlier on, then you can incorporate that and maybe even raise your hand in the class and say, okay, hey, how do the, pelvic floor and the abdominal walls work together? And, maybe they might think about it, but that's a whole nother discussion. Um, so you talked earlier about you mentioned that by doing this and learning to have this coordination of this partnership, as you said, and you mentioned that you can also ward off like prolapse and hemorrhoid, and even can you explain even what's prolapse? Because I wanted to talk about. Right now we're focusing on the birth of the twins and how to make that just easier and more fluid. But I think there's also some other long-term benefits as well. And maybe you can describe those.
Well, as I said, the long-term benefits is a woman's recovery of her
Mm-hmm.
abdominals and her pelvic floor are going to, if she has a small diastasis and she has, and she does have a vaginal birth, pushing correctly saves her pelvic floor. All right. If she's had a C-section, then she's still going to know how to, um, use her abdominal muscles in the recovery process, and because what happens is if a woman has a diastasis, she's going to have a couple of different side effects: backaches. And here's a woman that's now taking care of two babies. Okay, having back issues is not the best
Carrying
thing
twins
to
is,
have.
yes,
Right.
it's a workout.
It's not the so a twins now. I had a lady, she was a physical therapist, and she uh, did my program because she was interested in getting pregnant, and she was a type A personality. So she did my program before she got pregnant, and then she got pregnant with twins, did it during her pregnancy, and then did it afterwards. She came to a seminar, and there were several physical therapists there, and they had never seen somebody with twins that had no diastasis.
Wow.
Okay. So everybody was in awe about that. So I think having a small diastasis, keeping it as small as possible for twins, a woman having twins is really so important for her pregnancy, how she's going to feel, for her birth, and most importantly,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
her recovery, because if she ends up with over a 10-finger diastasis, that's a lot harder than a 3 or 4 finger diastasis. Okay. And it's going to be a lot harder on her back, on her pelvic floor, um, just in breastfeeding. It's going to bring her posture forward, and then it's going to cause the, issues with pain down the arm. I mean, there's like, you know, a myriad of issues that come with this separation of the abdominal muscles. Okay.
So I think that you raise a really great point that I think so often maybe we tend to think of this separation diastasis as being almost more cosmetic, like, oh, I don't like to have the belly, but there's so many just physiological things that are going on that can interfere with just day-to-day life. And like you said, I mean, breastfeeding twins is like, one of the hardest things. And if you're feeling pain or you have, like posture issues or things like that, and it's interfering with breastfeeding, then you've got these layers of things that you're trying to deal with. So I can see how that's just super important. If you can take care of this thing, then that will have such a positive effect on all these other things down the road. So I'm just a huge fan. I just want to say that this has been so great to learn about the pelvic floor and how abdominals work together and how simple exercises can help improve birth outcomes and improve overall health. And thank you so much to Julie Tupler for sharing this incredibly important information with us. You can get more evidence-based information about birth practices and diastasis recti on her website. So it's diastasisrehab.com. And be sure to check out newmommymedia.com, where we will have all of our podcast episodes, plus videos and more. So this wraps up our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you like Twin Talks as much as we do, please consider checking out the amazing businesses that sponsor our show week after week. And we'd love for you to tell other twin parents about this resource, which of course is absolutely free. And if you want to check out some of the other podcasts we produce, such as Newbies, Parent Savers, The Boob Group, and Preggy Pals, then visit our website at newmommymedia.com. Thanks for listening to Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.